Hi everyone, Jessica here from Paper Ink Stamp and welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be looking at issue 95 of Creative Stamping, and with this magazine we get the free gift called Message in a Bottle, and we also get a 6x6 inch stencil as well. So this stencil actually includes 3 different stencils, so I'll just pop it onto some paper here so you can really see. You've got the top section, it's got some really lovely waves, then you've got a sprinkling of love hearts, and then you've got these shells and sort of starfish at the bottom as well. And then of course the A4 stamp set, we've also got designs in here by Lisa Horton as well. So you've got the bottles and then you've got lots of things that you can either put in the bottles or use to create really lovely scenes. As always, you've got lots of inspiration in the magazine, so let's take a look. So you've got this one right on the cover. There's lots of elements going on here. It's really great using all of those stamps actually in the stamp set. And again, then looking in the magazine, you've got how to use texture paste with the stencil, lots of different style cards, you've got different shaped cards in here as well. And you do also get some discount codes in the magazine for certain products that have been used as well from the Craft Stash website. So again, lots of different style cards. See, these are all made by different people. It's amazing to see what you can do with the same stamp set. It just depends on your style. These ones here are all very simple, but they're just as beautiful. So let's take a quick look at what comes in the next issue in a second. So with the next issue, this is called Summer Escapes, and this has got the 2 stamps on the left hand side of the people holding hands, and then you've got lots of different stamps in there to help build sort of summer scenes, perfect for up and coming cards, birthday cards, lots of different occasions. But for now, let's get started creating today's card. So I've got 3 different shades of blue here. We've got Arctic blue, French blue and Cornflower blue. I've cut myself a piece of cardstock. This is a 3.5 by 9 inch. This is going to be a slimline card. I do need to just trim this down a little bit, which I will do later on, but I've also then trimmed my blue cardstock. This is by Craft Perfect. I've cut that to the same size, and you can see that I'm just ripping off the top. I want this to be waves, so I'm starting with that darker French blue colour at the back, go into the lightest, which is the Arctic blue, but you can see I'm just ripping it, trying to distress the top of this. I'm gonna try and make this look like waves. We're gonna add a little bit of texture as well using the stencil. But once I've sort of got it roughly worked out, the lengths that I want the cardstock, I'm just going to trim that down just so I know exactly what I'm working with. And you can see here, literally just trimming down that backing piece as well. So as I said, I want to create a little bit of texture using the stencil. So I'm going to use the stencil on just the blue cardstock, not the backing sheet. And we're going to be using that top wave stencil. So we're going to take the smallest piece to begin with, and I'm using some Distress Texture Paste. And again, this is then just going to apply really lovely through that stencil and just give us that really nice white design, but we are going to sort of distress it just a little bit. So to be able to use this stencil, you do need to mask off the other designs. So where you have got those 3 designs in here, you can see I just want the top one, so I've masked that off with some purple masking tape. And I'm just then using one of the Nuvo spatulas to apply then that texture paste through the stencil. So if you wanted to use this middle stencil, you would need to mask off the waves and then the shapes at the bottom as well. But it's really great to have a nice variety within one stencil, not having sort of tons of different stencils. So you can see that I'm just wiping off any excess texture paste and just popping that back into the tub. And you can see that I'm just working across all of the blue cardstock that I've got. I'm trying to have the waves in different areas, so I'm sort of putting the stencil in different positions. For the dark blue and the middle blue, I'm just going to do 1 layer, but for that lighter Arctic blue, which is going to be right at the front, I am actually going to create another line underneath. So I am just going to leave these to dry to begin with before then I apply my next layer. So you can see I'm just trying to fit these in because this is going to be the section on the top. You're going to be able to see this, but with the other 2 blue pieces of cardstock, you're not going to see under that because obviously we've got it layered up. So there's no point in applying any of that texture paste. But once again, just leaving this aside to dry. You want to make sure that this has dried lovely, just so if you come to cut it down or you apply anything else to it, it's not going to kind of do anything to your design. So I wanted to just again rough it up a little bit, give it a little bit more interest. So I've taken a white pigment ink. This ink pad is called Glacier White and it's one of the Ranger inks, and I'm just using a dauber just to add a little bit of white around. I want it to be a little bit like foam, so I'm trying to apply that mainly to the top of the cardstock. I was hoping it would be a lot whiter, so it would be more like foam. You could use something like embossing powder with the top section, so you could add kind of foamy waves to this, but you can see I'm not circling it because you've got the texture paste there. Obviously it's not gonna sort of blend onto the cardstock, but you can see I'm just tapping. I'm not too worried about sort of making it look too perfect. I want it to be just a little bit rough and ready. So, and again then I'm going to leave that to one side just to dry off before I add some splatter to this. So I've got some of the Blueprint Sketch Distress ink. I've popped that onto my glass mat. I've got a paintbrush with just some water and I've diluted that a little bit just to help it splatter. And you can see then I'm just really liberally splattering that all over then these pieces. Again, just going to add a little bit of interest. It is worth maybe getting like a splatter box or something, because these splatters do kind of get everywhere, so you just want to be careful with that. I did then also do the same thing with some Cosmic Shimmer mica powder. So this is just some shimmer powder that you mix with water, and I'm just doing the same thing again and just splattering it all over the background. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is create a bit of a background on our white card base. So of course we're going to see the very top of this. You can see that I've got a little bit of that blue colour on here. That is again because I splattered it and it just went over my desk. So again, just you want to protect sort of the areas around where you're working if you're doing any splatters, or yeah, get something like a splat box or just a regular cardboard box you could work in. So for now I just wanted to add something simple, just a little bit of detail, so I'm just adding some clouds. So the stencil I'm using, this is the Clouds for Days 6x6 inch stencil by Simon Says Stamp, and then I'm just using some peacock's feathers. I was going to use some, I think it was a lighter blue I was going to go for, but I decided just to add something a little bit different, just so you could see it a little bit. And just to add another little bit of variety of colour, because of course I have got a lot of blue going on this card. Just using one of those blending brushes, and I've come down a lot further than what I needed to, but in the end I do end up chopping it down and just bringing it down the page a little bit anyway, so I've kind of overestimated where I needed to stop. So the design of the card, I want to have the 3 big bottles stamped onto a background, and they're going to be kind of floating in the water. So I really loved how they had the bit of colouring on the packaging itself, because they've got sort of the purple, blues and pinks kind of mixed together. I'm going to try and recreate that here. So I've taken a piece of watercolour cardstock, I've got my messy mat that I've just smushed some inks onto. So the colours I'm using in the Distress Oxide range is a Wilted Violet, I got Peacock Feathers again, and then I've got that Picked Raspberry. So I put the 3 colours down on the mat to begin with, smushed that once, dried it off, did it again, and then I'm just going in with the single colour. So I went in with the Peacock's Feathers first, just to add a little bit more of that colour, dried it off again, and then gone in with that Picked Raspberry as well, and let that dry, and you can see that I've got this really sort of interesting background. So now I'm just going to stamp out these 3 large bottles. So these are a really fantastic size, and like I said at the beginning, you've got lots of elements that you can pop into those bottles, and then you could use the sentiments to go in there as well, but I'm just going to stamp them. I'm using some of the Memento Tuxedo Black ink, because I am going to do just a very small amount of colouring with my alcohol markers, just to colour in like the corks and the bit around the top of the bottle, but it's going to be super basic. I'm also then just going to add a few elements inside the bottles. You're really not going to see them kind of too much, but I thought I'd just add again another little bit of interest. So with this big bottle, I'm adding these little shoal and fish. I really love this stamp actually, I think this is great. In that round bottle in the bottom left hand corner, I'm going to stamp an anchor and a shell. You don't end up seeing the anchor bit, just the very top of the shell, and I did end up leaving then that Love Heart bottle blank. But these are really versatile. You could use any other stamps that you have inside these bottles. You know, you could use them for, again, lots of different occasions. And I'm just going to cut out around it. So I'm cutting right up to the line. I'm not worried about having any sort of border, of course, because they're stamped onto a background, so you're not going to have that white border anyway, but just really easily trimming these out. And then we can get started actually assembling the card together. So if we sort of have a look at how this is going to go, so you can see that we're just going to arrange the bottles just to be tucked into the waves and then look like they'll just be floating there. But I do end up bringing this whole design down a little bit. So you can see I've kind of chopped quite a bit off the bottom, just so then I had more space to see that bigger bottle out the top, and then just to help kind of spread it out a little bit more. So for attaching this onto the card, I'm just using some double-sided tape for this bottom layer. So you can see I'm not taping across the top because I want to be able to tuck that bottle in, because I don't know where it's going to go yet. I'm just going to leave it completely open, but you could, of course, before sticking it down onto your the white base, you could then pop that bottle in and glue it down. But I'm just lining this up then with the cardstock. So like I said, I did end up just trimming it down just so I can get this in place. And again, just using some tape to hold this down. But it's gonna, I put it to an angle so it is gonna look like it's just sort of floating there. But I really love then the texture of the sort of waves and the stencil in there as well, and then of course having that little bit of rip, having that little bit of splatter. It's just lots of elements sort of coming together, and then those bottles having that mixture of colour in there. I think it's really lovely. So for my middle layer, I wanted to, of course, create a little bit of dimension. So I'm using the Simon Says Stamp Big Mama foam tape. Done the same thing again. So I've just added the foam along the sides and the bottom, and just a little piece in the middle, because I actually need this now to be supported, because I'm going to be then sticking the top piece on top of it again. So the whole thing does need to be supported. So again, some double-sided tape on the back of this middle bottle. Like I said, going to tuck this in so you're not really going to see those stamps, just the very top of that shell on the left-hand side. And then for the very bottom one, again, some Big Mama foam tape here. Again, another piece in the middle just to help to support that. But I'm really happy that I kind of spread it out a little bit more. It just, like I said, sort of elongates the card a little bit. Sort of, you don't want everything kind of bunched up in the middle. That's what I really love about slimline cards, is you've got more space to work, so you don't need to kind of bunch everything together. And then we've got space at the bottom then just to add our sentiment. So once we've got that in, we can get started with our sentiment. So I have, of course, gone for kind of a blue theme here, a little bit of purple, and I'm going to be stamping in black ink. I could have incorporated a few other colours, but I thought since it's at sea, again, just kind of gone for that blue. So I've taken some of the French blue cardstock, just cut a strip, and I've taken the sentiment Sending You a Message. This is actually one long sentiment, but I did trim this in half because I wanted to do something that I don't normally tend to do, which was to separate the sentiment across the card. I always kind of like that look, but it's just not something that I tend to do. So I've cut it just straight, so it will be Sending You and then separately a message, and then it sort of breaks up that font as well. So I used my stamping platform so I could stamp it a few times if I needed to. I used some of that VersaFine Onyx black ink, and I did then heat emboss this with some clear embossing powder just to give it a little bit of shine. And again then, just to match in with the rest of the card, I'm literally just going to rip this message. So you can see that I'm just really tearing at the sides, trying to get that underneath. So this cardstock is brilliant because it's colour all the way through. It doesn't have a white core. But you can see as I'm tearing it, that core is lighter than what the actual top of the cardstock is. And I think that's really lovely because it gives it a little bit of dimension. Kind of looks like maybe you've matte and layered it onto a lighter cardstock, but of course you haven't. So before we attach this, I'm going to actually assemble the card together. So I'm just using my tape pen just to attach this. So my panel, I'm going to be sticking onto a piece of that Cornflower blue cardstock. And then I can attach this in a sec onto my blank card base. But before that, we're going to then pop down our sentiments. So again, using a piece of that Big Mama foam tape. So again, I know I talk about this in a lot of my recent videos, how much I love this foam tape. It is really great because even though we've used that already on the card and we've got 2 layers, because it's not particularly thick, it's brilliant for adding that dimension, but it doesn't make it so thick where, you know, you're gonna have to pay some maybe extra postage, where it's just, you look at it and think it's just ridiculously thick. That's what I really love about this. So that's the sentiments just attached to the front panel. Before I actually attach my panel, I did say this in my last video about decorating the inside. If you're going to doing that before you attach the panel, I'm not putting this in my stamping platform, which is where I come have the issue, but I am just doing this before I attach it. So I've not got any extra ink, but I'm just using the sort of residual ink that's still in this blending brush. I'm just then going to do a banner at the top and the bottom of the inside of this card base with that wavy stencil again. So once again, it's just matching the inside of the card with the outside of the card as well. So once we've got that done, we can go ahead and then attach our panel to the actual card base. So the finished card size, this is of course a slimline card, and this does then measure 9.5 inch by 3.5 inch. So this is on the bigger side, but these stamps are quite big. So I wanted to make sure that I didn't have, you know, sort of a tiny card trying to fit these in. And then I just added an extra bit of tape just to hold the neck of that bottle down a little bit. And then just as a last embellishment, I'm going to add some Nuvo crystal drops. We've got here the black, and I do then use the duck egg blue. Sorry, I had to grab the bottle because I just couldn't remember. So using the ebony black and duck egg blue crystal drops here. I ended up adding quite a few drops, but I tried to sort of vary the placement. I did some on the sentiments, some on the bottles, as well as around the card. And then that is basically this card finished. I really like how it came out. Something, again, a little bit different, but that's what I like about receiving these magazines, is it's not always necessarily a set that I would buy myself, but it helps me to sort of think outside of the box a little bit when actually using it. So this has been using the free stamp set from Creative Stamping issue 95, and this is called Message in a Bottle. If you do like this card, then please give this video a thumbs up and leave me a comment down below. I'll also pop some links in the description box down below for you to check out. On screen now, you'll see a couple of other video suggestions if you're interested in checking those out. And if you aren't currently a subscriber to my channel, please consider hitting that subscribe button and that notification bell so you get notified every time I upload a new video. So that's it for today. Thanks very much for watching, and happy crafting.